That is some harsh midday lighting. Probably won't be able to see my beautiful face. What a shame. Alright folks, we got ourselves a proper goose chase. This is a 1995 Chevy kind of medium duty truck. It's set up as a tender for the local crop dusters. Anyway, the customer complaint is kind of bizarre. It has a Caterpillar engine, and he says that it runs, but it dies after maybe 5 or 10 minutes of running, and you have to shut off the ignition, wait for the circuit breakers to cool down, then you can restart it, and the process basically starts over. But he thinks it only happens when the PTO is engaged. So yeah, that should be fun to track down. We don't have any wiring diagrams. Even if we did, it wouldn't matter because it's a cab and chassis truck, so it's always just a complete shot in the dark. There it is, the power plant. Look at that front suspension. Not much travel. Anyway, I don't know that much about these 3116s. I believe this is an entirely mechanical engine. So it should function kind of similar to the Cummins PT injection system. So you have a pump here, but that's not really an injection pump. It's just kind of a pressure pump. And then the injection is actually done by mechanical unit injectors. So each injector has its own push rod that comes off of the camshaft, and that mechanically pressurizes the fuel up to the high pressure. Is that the wrong serpentine belt? Sure looks like it. Got an extra groove on the water pump, extra groove on the alternator, and an extra groove on the damper, but they don't line up. Anyway, let's not get distracted. Yeah, there's the shutdown solenoid right there. Looks like somebody's had it off using the factory service tool, aka a punch. Looks okay. There's an extra pigtail. That's probably a flyback diode, if I had to guess. Anyway, no computers, nothing fancy, entirely mechanical. Well, inside the cab, we have a bunch of circuit breakers. Yeah, so that guy down there is the ignition circuit breaker. I think maybe the first thing we should do is put an amp clamp on that. Just see how many amps it's pulling. That's a 20 amp circuit breaker. And we'll kind of go from there. It runs, but he said it really starts hard. I'm not exactly sure why. Fuel problem or something. Alright, don't try this at home. We're just going to put a jumper wire in there with no fused protection. Danger is my middle name. And we'll set up an amp clamp. Okay, the way this works is every millivolt on the meter is 100 milliamps on the amp clamp. Okay, that's interesting. So that's not bad. 2.5 amps down to about an amp. Let's see what happens when we flip on the PTO switch here real quick. No difference. So I don't know if that's related or not. Oh yeah, that doesn't work. You gotta use this push button. Sounds like a champ. Uh-oh. Okay, I think we found the problem. Somebody wired up all these functions through the ignition circuit breaker. Don't ask me why, but yeah, all that stuff. Especially this cooling fan. That's pulling 16 amps right now. Is it even running? I don't think so. Okay. Anyway, that's a problem. Well, that's the only fan that I see. Is it locked up? Yeah, locked up solid. Okay, that's a problem. I see we've got some yeah, residential wiring there, THHN. You know, the usual stuff. Let's get into that control box and see if we can figure out where the power comes from. Maybe we can just kind of rejigger it so it comes from its own independent source instead of from that ignition switch, or we can add a relay. That's not very helpful. Well, some of these are listed here though. Fan, fuel, auger, 2 on top, 1 on top. Yeah, that doesn't do what I thought it did. I guess let's go check the control box in the cab. This is just the junction box. There we go. Okay, so fan is that guy right there. So it must be that 20 amp fuse there. So the power coming in must be on this guy right here. I wonder where that comes from. I mean, it obviously comes through that circuit breaker, but I wonder where they tapped into it. Alright, there's a fuse here underneath the dash. I'm gonna try pulling that and see what happens. Yes, sir. Okay. Alright folks, you just can't make this stuff up. This is the fuse that powers everything. And to power this fuse, they just ripped one of the wires out of the diagnostic connector. This is pre-OBD2. Yeah, look at that. That's about a 18 gauge wire, maybe, running into a 30 amp fuse that in turn powers a block with 25 amps worth of fuses in it. Yeah, that's not good. And the wiring looks pretty sketchy too. It just runs through a hole in the firewall with no grommet. See, can you see that? There's a spot there that's rubbed bare. Got bare copper. So this is all wrong. All wrong. All right, folks, we're back on whatever you want to call this thing. I think I've got a plan. I could not get the for real parts to fix it. Let me tell you guys a tale of industrial parts procurement woe. This is pretty typical. That heat exchanger is made by Thermal Transfer Products out of Wisconsin. I contacted them. They would not talk to me. They only sell to dealers. They referred me to a dealer. I contacted them. Their phone was disconnected. They were out of business. I called them back, got another dealer's name, contacted them. Oh, how did it go? I had to send them an email. I waited 2 days, didn't hear a reply. I called back. She said 24 hours. 24 hours later, I did not have a reply. So I called back. 24 hours later, they finally gave me a quote. The quote was for the entire heat exchanger for $750. I called back, said I just want to buy the fan. 24 hours later, she called back and said they will not sell you the fan. You have to buy the entire heat exchanger. So, in the meantime, I went to Zorro, which is the online version of Grainger, and I bought this Mardine Universal cooling fan. It's reversible. It's got a universal mounting kit. Should work just fine. As far as the electronics go, here's the plan. This is the way it's currently set up. They have tied right into the 20 amp ignition circuit breaker to run this big fuse block that powers the body. We are going to add in a relay. All that a relay does is it allows a low current circuit to turn on a high current circuit. So we're going to leave the wiring essentially as it was, but instead of actually switching on this fuse blocks, it's going to switch on the relay, which will then turn on a separate power source for the fuse block. We're going to chop this guy out right here. And right there. I think we'll go ahead and run a new wire. That one's pretty wiped out. It's got this nice little fuse / relay box on the firewall, so we're going to go ahead and use it. We're going to tap right into the incoming power. Smart person probably would have unhooked the battery. Zzz. Okay, so that'll give us power through a 30 amp fuse to the load side of the relay. Tie that up. Now we need a ground. That'll probably do. That'll work. Now we got two wires coming out. One is the hot side of the coil, and the other one is the switched side of the load. This one right here is the normally closed terminal. We're not going to use that, so we'll just tuck it out of the way. Alright folks, we're back on the the auger truck or whatever we're calling this. Got the sweatshirt out. That's not a good sign. Winter's coming. Anyway, sorry if this seems like a jumbled up mess of a video. It's because this is a jumbled up mess of a job. Let me show you what discoveries I've made. So I don't know what I was thinking. There's actually two red wires under the dash, and they both have or had inline fuse holders. One was tapped into that tiny little wire from the old diagnostic connector. It's like a 20 gauge wire. That is powering the fuse block there inside that plastic box. The second red wire, this one right here, was tapped into this white wire on this, whatever it is, 8-pin plug. That, I believe, is the ignition feed that comes directly from the key switch in the column. So both of those wires or sources are hot with the key on. This one, I believe, powers the PTO. So it powers that little control right there that actually engages the PTO. Now, why they did it this way, I have no idea. I mean, they're both controlled by that same ignition circuit breaker, so they could have just tapped both of those power feeds into that white wire. I don't know why they went into the diagnostic port. I also don't know why they ran two separate wires that run out through the firewall, under the cab, around the back of the cab, up through the bottom of the passenger floorboard, under the passenger seat, and then up into this control box or into that PTO control. I mean, they literally could have just run a wire from here to there. Or they could have run one wire that powered that fuse block, added one more fuse, and then pulled power out of that to run the PTO control. So yeah, I'm having a hard time following it because I don't have any wiring diagrams, and whoever wired this thing just had no logical thought process at all. Anyway, here's what we're gonna do. I've amended our wiring diagram. So that's what it had before. We're just going to splice those two wires, the red wires, together on the outside of the firewall. They'll both be powered by that 30 amp fuse that powers through the relay. That's 14 gauge wire. It should be good for 30 amps. Yeah, that's the easiest thing to do. So the red wire is going to get spliced together. And then they're going to get connected to the red wire, which comes from the relay. Okay. Now the brown wire here comes from that ignition switch, the white wire under the dash. And it gets connected to the black wire, which will go to the control side of that relay. Okay, beautiful. I don't know if you guys can see, but I drilled a new hole in the firewall and installed an actual grommet. We'll have to put something around these yellow wires to protect them. I checked, the ignition switch must be goofed up. The start position doesn't work. That's why they added that push button for the starter. That's fine. He doesn't want that fixed anyway. He just wants the ignition circuit breaker to stop blowing on him. Okay, we should be live. Okay, no power now. If I did this right, when I turn the key on, it should have power there. Boom! Look at that. Okay. Fantastic. Better make sure we have power at the PTO as well. Yep, I hear it clicking. Fantastic. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Yeah, I believe that'll do it. If we can figure out a way to hold it on there. It comes with these kind of zip ties that you slide through the fins. I don't know if that's good enough to hold it or not. Kind of think it would be. Let's try it. If we don't like it, we can make a for real bracket. Are they dry? Close enough. Decided to make some brackets. I don't really care for those zip ties or whatever you want to call them. We gotta get moving though. I think the rain's coming. Got the fenders installed. Looks pretty good. Uh-oh. The Ranger's back. Okay, need a couple lock washers for that side, but it looks pretty decent. If you didn't know any better, you'd almost think somebody did that that knew how. Should be connected to the one that says fan. I would think. good as it gets. Barn swallows are going crazy. All right, folks, I think we're done. Maybe we could spend a couple of weeks cleaning up all this wiring, but that's not what the customer wants. He just wants it to stay running while he's using his crazy apparatus here. Yeah, what we've done looks pretty good, I think. It tied up the best I can. I don't like this THHN wiring running everywhere with no loom, exposed to the sunlight. It's really not made for that. Anyway, yeah, this stuff all works now. So I guess that's all that matters. Get that put back together. Wires are all tied up. Yeah, that fan looks good. I'm happy with that. The brackets were kind of a pain in the butt, but turned out pretty nice. Cool. Well, I'm gonna send this thing down the road. I think they're getting ready to use it. Apparently they use this to load seed into the airplanes, and then they actually spread seed with the crop dusters. So they'll spread it on a field just like that one, I don't know, about this time of the year, and then when the crops are picked, those seeds will grow and they'll create a cover. We call it a cover crop. Prevents erosion and keeps the soil doing what it's supposed to do. Yeah, I don't know who built this thing. It's quite a feat of Yankee engineering. I haven't figured out how this part of it works. So that spout is supposed to flip over and come out straight. But there's only one cylinder there, and it's got to go over 180 degrees. So unless I'm thinking about this wrong, there's no way that can work. You must have to extend the cylinder until it gets to its maximum travel and then retract the cylinder to go over center. My dad had a case backhoe that worked kind of like that. In order to get the boom up into the latch, you had to boom up and then reverse and boom down to go over center. I don't know. It's a weird truck. That's it. Thanks for watching.